Hi, Maria. This is Friar Roderick here for AirMaria.com, and we are in Washington, D.C. at the Hyatt Regency for the March for Life rally. And we have here Leticia Velasquez. How you doing, Leticia?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for coming over and visiting my table.
Yeah, so we're at Leticia's table. She's a very special mother, and it's proof this right here because she actually has a book called A Special Mother is Born. And how are you a special mother?
Well, the day that my daughter Christina Maria was born with Down syndrome, she is a special needs child. So I believe that God extended my vocation as a mother into special motherhood, and that's how I define being a mother to a special needs child. There's extra grace that's needed in order to be the mother of a special needs child, something I never thought I was up to. I told God that, you could never send me a special needs child because I'm not holy enough. Guess what God said? Take the child and I'll give you the grace, and day by day, he gives me the grace to do what I need to do to be her mother. On Friday, I needed the grace to take her to school in her pajamas because she wouldn't get dressed.
Okay.
And took a lot of grace to have the patience, but the school said, bring her and we'll dress her in school, and we did. And she went to school, so that was a bit of a trial. Little everyday things like that require more patience than, say, the average mom would have to put out. That's where I consider that the grace of God is making me special day by day. Because I used to look at these moms at church with a 80-year-old lady with a 40-year-old son, and they'd be so patient with him, taking him to communion. I'd say, oh, I could never do that. Well, 40 years ago, they probably didn't imagine they'd be doing that. So after 40 years of day by day serving the needs of their child, I think that God helped them.
So what happened? What was the most that trying part? You were. It was told at one point that you had a child that was that had this problem. When did you find out?
At birth. I refused prenatal testing because being in the pro-life movement, I knew that would probably lead to me being harassed. I was 39 when I expected her. So I knew my chances were higher to have a child with Down syndrome. So I refused testing, and one day at Mass I had an interior idea, a voice, I would say, that you're going to have a child with Down syndrome. Now, of course, I doubted that. I thought it was hormones, it's your imagination. But going up to Holy Communion, again, this interior voice said, I want you to accept this child as a gift from my hand when you receive me. And I said, wow, that really sounds like our Lord's voice. And it was true. I did have a child with Down syndrome. The doctors never saw it coming. So in that way, I had 4 months to sort of accept God's will for me. And the day after Father Pavone was on with a show about Down syndrome on EWTN, so I said, oh, I think this is for me. And he was right. The doctors were shocked, but I wasn't.
Speaking of doctors, you got very little support from them, right? As far as taking care of the child and how to take care of the child and supporting the child. That was the hardest part at that point, right?
Yeah, my doctor was terrified of me suing him and blaming him for not having diagnosed this. And I told him...
Wrongful birth lawsuit.
Yeah, I think 19 states accept the wrongful birth lawsuits in this country.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually there are 4 states that accept wrongful birth from the disabled person themselves. Oh, wow. So like Christina could allegedly go and sue and say, I wish I were never born, which I know she would never do that. But so they're afraid, and even aside from lawsuits, they're just afraid that they'll be blamed. Because earlier in that hospital, a couple months before, a mother had been very upset with the doctors who hadn't predicted it. But I said, I took my chances when I didn't take the test. Wouldn't have changed what I did anyway. And you did not bring this child to earth. Our Lord did. Right. You brought this child to birth, and she was healthy. We had to do a C-section. Everything worked out well. I said, that's your job. So thank you for a good job. And he looked vastly relieved. The nurses, on the other hand, were very unprepared. I got a phone number for special services, and that was it. There was no one to talk to me. I needed help nursing the baby, and there really wasn't a lot of support. So, in fact, one nurse yelled at me for not getting testing. And I said, it wouldn't have changed what I did, so why bother? And she still did. It bothered her that I hadn't gotten prenatal testing. So it was a little disappointing,
Now, what prompted you to write a book then?
Well, that. And then my dad went to the internet and Googled everything he could find about Down syndrome, printed it out without reading it, and then it was all about aborting a child with Down syndrome. And I said, is this what you come across when you look it up on the internet? And sure enough, I checked it out, and it did. So I decided I was going to tell everybody the joy that Christina brought me, and nobody wanted to hear it. Okay. The doctors are like, no thanks. Even my local church and all that. They weren't that open, so I said, I'm going to the internet. And in 2006 I did, and I wrote a story. It was published, called A Special Mother is Born, in Faith and Family magazine. And it got so many letters to the editor that I started to realize there's a lot of women out there with amazing stories, and some of them far more dramatic than just having a child with Down syndrome, which, after all, is not the drama that it may have been in former times. Children with Down syndrome have a 60-year life expectancy. It's never been a better time to have a child with Down syndrome. But there's mothers in this storybook that I knew from homeschooling on Long Island when I was there. The one mother had a child with trisomy 18 who lived 9 days. She said she lived a novena. Her name was Rita, and she was the 12th child of a very devout Catholic family. And they dealt with her death with such grace and such beauty. The funeral was a celebration of her life, as sad as it was. But the family did everything right. And I remember that before my daughter was born. And I went back to her and some of the other very brave moms, including from the Friary. We have Helen Dilworth from the Friary. And that's right. So she writes about her children that she adopted and the child she had with cerebral cystic fibrosis. So we have some local people, and we have people from across the country, and 3 men. Catholic Answers host Patrick Coffin. He had a daughter named Naomi Rose. She lived about 2 weeks. And he wrote a beautiful story for Catholics United for the Faith, and I asked him to I could reprint it. And Rick Santorum wrote a beautiful story about his daughter, Bella Maria, who is still alive. She's over 3.5 years old now.
Rick Santorum was running for president.
That's right. This was back a couple of years ago before he announced his run. But I had interviewed him back in 2007 and kept in touch, and I knew when his daughter was born. And when he wrote this story, 2 years worth every tier for the Philadelphia Inquirer, I asked his press secretary if I could have a copy of it. And I just saw, a remarkable man that had very much transformed by his daughter. He was in the pro-life fight, but now his daughter has given him all the more reason to be pro-life.
It's a celebration of life as opposed to celebration of being beautiful or celebration of some athletic ability or intellectual ability. It's really about the joy of life besides all that.
Well, these are spiritual champions that we have in this book. I was just interviewed by Catherine Jean Lopez, the National Review, and she said, a lot of these mothers refer to St. Gianna Beretta Molla. Isn't that setting the bar kind of high? Yeah. And I said, well, if you want to be an Olympic athlete, whose picture do you put on? If you want to be an athlete, you put an Olympic athlete picture on the wall. That's setting the bar rather high, isn't it? Right. So the saints are our Olympic athletes in the faith. So shoot for the highest. We have Blessed John Paul, Blessed Mother Teresa mentioned in this book, and a future saint mentioned in the book, Jerome Lejeune. His cause for canonization was opened in 2007. He's the French geneticist that discovered Down syndrome and devoted the rest of his life to finding a cure because of the abortion rate. His discovery was used to create prenatal testing and then the subsequent abortion rate. It broke his heart. So he dedicated the rest of his life trying to find a cure for Down syndrome because he loved the children and he wanted to see them come to birth. And he also helped our Holy Father, Blessed John Paul, formed the first Pontifical Council for Life. He founded it on his deathbed of cancer. He founded it. So he was a real champion of the faith. And he lost his Nobel Prize because of being pro-life. You discover a disease, you usually win a prize, right? But being so pro-life, outspokenly pro-life, really cost him the Nobel Prize. And he knows that. He won the Kennedy Award. He won the William Allen Award for genetics. He's an acclaimed physician and researcher. But being pro-life has really hurt. It really hurt. But he didn't care because he wasn't doing it for the spirit, the glory on earth. He was doing it for the spiritual glory. So,
what do you hope to accomplish with the book, for the most part?
Well, I want to give comfort to the parents that are facing a prenatal diagnosis. This is a great gift to give to someone who's expecting a child and is fearing that there's a prenatal diagnosis. So I'm hoping to give the moms courage because the doctors will often tell you everything that's wrong and they don't tell you what's right. And what's right is the joy that that child will bring. Every single family in this book has been transformed by loving their child. They've come back to the church, their marriages have been saved. It's really a wonderful story of how giving and sacrifice can transform your life and how the people that the world despises are the ones that really in the end are the champions of the faith and they have more to give. So anybody who's looking for an inspiring story, but I hope to save lives with it. I want doctors to have it and priests to have it in their hands so that when they get that woman who's desperate that they can counsel her. So I'm hoping.
I hope that works very well for you. I hope that really increases the how much exposure this issue gets, and
It's getting a lot more. We had a conference today at Family Resource Council on prenatal diagnosis with pro-life physicians from all over the country.
you're here with this booth.
That's right. So we're calling it the year for hope and healing for those with a prenatal diagnosis. This is the year that we're going to make them realize how much hope is out there, not just for this life, but for the next life as well.
Beautiful. Well, God bless you, Leticia.
Thank you. Thank you. Ave Maria.
Ave Maria. God bless you. Ave Maria. Maria.